So what do I do to keep my electronics safe in the van when we're talking about some real heat? Well, we'll talk about that and more coming up in this episode of the podcast. Hey, thanks for joining me, everybody. It's episode 21 of the podcast. It's available in both audio and video. The video, of course, is on YouTube. The audio is available pretty much anywhere you may like to listen to podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and some other places. So check them out there if you want the audio version. If you were just meeting, my name's Robert. I'm just a guy who had a lifelong love affair with road trips and the open road. And now I make videos and podcasts and magazines and books and a few other things about the traveling lifestyle. We're going to talk today about how I managed to protect electronic gear in the heat when I'm in a van in the desert. Before we dive into that, though, fun story. It's actually a few weeks old now. I've been about a month old, really. I've been sitting on this one meaning to cover it. Article from NASA titled "Aren't You Glad It's Spring?" Well, they actually last month in mid-April, California got some rain in March and early April, and over in the western edge of the Mojave Desert, I'm in the kind of the eastern edge of the Mojave as I'm recording this, but over on the western edge in the Antelope Valley, California Poppy Reserve, well, they had a fantastic bloom of poppies. And these flowers are so cool when you see them in the desert in the springtime. Well, anyway, NASA, this bloom was so good this year over on the western edge of the Mojave that NASA literally picked it up on a satellite image. So, I mean, that's a good bloom, right? When you can pick it up from outer space. So I'll have the link in the show notes if you want to check that out and read a little more about it. All right, so I had a question a little bit ago from Gladys. It was actually on episode 19, so 2 episodes back. And Gladys asks, how do you keep your gear safe? 90 degrees outside is over 100 degrees or more inside. 100% correct on the numbers in my experience there. My general experience, this van is insulated pretty good, so if I keep the windows covered so I don't have sun beating through, on whatever side the sun's hitting from, it's usually going to be about 10 degrees hotter than outside. If it's a really hot day and I have no shade, it may be a little more than that even. And it may be a little less than 10 degrees if I'm boondocking and I'm able to open up all the doors and windows and have fans running. But you're never going to get up below the outside temperature. And what I did find, we had this heat wave hit. Normally I'm up north by now, so it's not a problem in the spring. When it becomes a problem up north is usually in the summer because it does get 90 and sometimes hotter up, in Wyoming, Montana, Oregon, the places I hang out up there. But this year I'm a little late in the desert, so we went from being in the 70s and gorgeous to up into the 80s, then pretty quick into the 90s, and now we're bouncing between 90s and 80s basically. And when it's in the 90s, it is brutally hot. Even if you're able to keep it at the same as outside air temperature, that's still pretty darn hot. And what I did find while I was boondocking in the desert was that if I kept my reflectix in the windshield, and then I actually picked up a very low-tech outside windshield cover. You can buy these things for a good chunk of money. It's actually a vinyl-covered outdoor tablecloth cover, and I wrapped it around the windshield, tucked it through the front doors, and shut the doors on, and it works pretty good. It doesn't look quite as good as a legit cover probably would, but it does the job of that, keeping a lot of the sun from even getting through the glass, and then putting like Mylar or reflectors on the side of the van, the south side of the van that was getting the most sun on the outside, coupled with all the curtains and stuff, and then having windows and doors open. I was able to keep it to about 5 degrees above outside, which is the best I've ever actually pulled off when the sun was out. So I was pleased with that, but still, it's 95 degrees out, and you're only 5 degrees above outside in the van. That's still like 100 degrees, and that's just not good for electronics. And my experience has been, once the van temperature starts getting above about 88 or 90, that kind of thing, the interior temperature, I start having trouble with electronics, and especially because a lot of what I'm doing is fairly processor intensive. I'm doing video work or that kind of thing, running Photoshop and Lightroom, that kind of stuff. So it can be pretty intensive on the computer, and it then likes to heat up. So at a best case, the computer's not running well, the hotspot's overheating, my phone might be overheating. So that's the best case. Worst case, you do have to start worrying about damaging electronics at those temperatures when they're overheating. And obviously, it's really expensive stuff. I don't want to do that. So what I was ended up doing in the desert when I was boondocking this spring is I would end up having to work for a little bit in the morning and then basically shut most things down, charge the phone for a while, then unplug it, and I could do some work on the phone when it wasn't charging, but I couldn't really use it and charge at the same time because it would get too hot. And then in the evening again, like basically after the sun went down, I could do some things for a few hours again, depending how long my batteries held up and stuff. So that was kind of, I was having to split it and to not run electronics when it was too hot. So that was kind of a challenge. What I've done now, I put an air conditioner in the back window, and it actually went better than I thought it would, and it came out pretty good, I think. It looks pretty decent, fairly decent, not too bad at least, and I'll have a video about that coming up soon on how I did that and more details on why I did it, but the basic gist of it is I'm not ready to leave Nevada yet, probably the first week of June maybe when I'm leaving here, and this allows me to very inexpensively get set up to where I can plug in at a cheap RV park in Nevada, run air conditioning all day when it's hot, and then just enjoy the lovely evenings. Because we're having temperatures in the 60s for overnight lows, so once the sun goes down, it is gorgeous. It's just when the sun's up, it's just too hot. And that allows me to work. And what I spent on the air conditioner and even on the RV park for a month, it's more than paid for by what I'm not losing in terms of lost work, because that's what was happening. I wasn't able to work a lot, and I was losing a lot of work and productivity because of that. So that's the deal with that. I got an air conditioner now, and this is going to help me out in the summer when it's hot, when I'm up north too, and it just gives me the option. I'm not always going to use it. I still prefer boondocking, but it gives me the option of if it is hot and it's and I can't, where it's affecting my ability to work, or just even to be miserably uncomfortable all the time, I can plug in, whether I stay at a campground or whether I am visiting friends or family who have electric. I can plug in on this. Thing's only 450 watts, so it's pretty easy to run just on an extension cord. So that's what I do. It is a problem, and it is something to be aware of. And on the flip side of that, extreme cold is also really rough on electronics, particularly on things like batteries. So you do kind of want to balance those. This may sound hokey, but when I was having some cold weather, I don't run the heat at night, so when I was having some real cold snaps a while ago, I'd actually put my laptop and phone in bed with me under the blankets so that they didn't get so cold, because I didn't want to destroy the batteries and stuff. So that's what I do. It is something to be aware of. If you just can't, if you can get in the shade, it's going to help, obviously, but other than that, I mean, if you just can't get the inside to a place where it's safe for electronics, and like I said, in my experience, usually around 88, 90 degrees, you start having problems. Probably you either just have to not run stuff or find a way to get cooler. And what I did was, air conditioning. So thanks for joining me, everybody, for this episode of the podcast. I'll catch you in the next episode.